The rain tapped against the studio windows like impatient fingertips, drumming a quiet rhythm behind the buzz of lighting rigs and whispered conversations. It was just another Tuesday at CNN Manhattan headquarters, but that evening the air felt heavier, charged, like the storm brewing outside had crept into the building, clinging to the cameras, cables, and conversations. Anderson Cooper sat in his chair beneath the studio lights, reading over his notes for the upcoming segment. He was composed, as always, with his usual cool professionalism, the blue of his tie sharp against his silver hair. But even he felt it. Something was different tonight, a sensation he couldn't quite name. Across from him, her name still inked fresh on the show docket, Rep. Jasmine Crockett, Texas's 30th Congressional District. Jasmine Crockett had arrived only moments before, shedding her rain-soaked coat in the green room, her phone vibrating non-stop in her bag. Her team was on edge. This was a major interview, prime time, national spotlight, and the host wasn't just anyone. Anderson Cooper didn't suffer empty talk. You came correct, or you crumbled under the weight of his unflinching gaze. Jasmine knew that, but she wasn't nervous. She was exhausted. Not from the travel or the prep or the endless scrutiny that came with being a black woman in Congress, though that alone was a trial by fire. No, she was worn thin from fighting the same battles over and over again, the bills that stalled, the lives forgotten, the promises broken, the politics of appearances where so often facts were twisted, voices silenced, and justice felt like a dream gasping for air in a smoky backroom. But Jasmine Crockett had never been one to stay silent. Born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri, Jasmine grew up surrounded by strength, her mother a nurse, her father a teacher. The world had taught her early how to speak up. She'd fought her way through law school, opened her own practice, and became a public defender before stepping into politics. Every step forward had been uphill, and tonight she carried not just her voice, but the unheard voices of so many, those pushed to the margins, those whose pain never made headlines. As the stage manager counted down, 3, 2, 1, the lights rose, cameras rolled. Anderson turned toward her with that familiar calm, his first question delivered like a surgeon's scalpel, poised, precise. Congresswoman Crockett, there's been a lot of rhetoric this week, another round of hearings, another partisan clash, but in your view, what's actually at stake here? Jasmine blinked once. The studio lights were hot, but her voice came cool and steady, wrapped in conviction. What's at stake? She echoed. Our democracy, Anderson, and I don't mean that as a soundbite. Anderson leaned in slightly. She had his attention, but he'd heard that phrase before. What came next had to cut through the noise. Jasmine continued, when you have people in power more concerned with protecting positions than protecting people, when policy becomes theater and lies go unchecked because truth is inconvenient, that's when the house starts to burn from the inside. The control room stilled. Even the producers stopped scrolling their notes. Anderson shifted. You're referring to the Oversight Committee hearings. I'm referring to what we allow ourselves to normalize. Jasmine said, her tone sharp but not bitter. We spend so much time debating the optics, who said what, who wore what, who raised their voice, that we ignore the root rot. People in my district aren't watching C-SPAN all day. They're working 2 jobs and still choosing between groceries and insulin. They don't have time for the theater. They need solutions. There was a pause, long enough for everyone to feel it. Anderson studied her, then set his notes down completely, an unscripted move, rare for him. "Tell me," he said quietly, "what do you think needs to change?" It was more than an interview now. It had become a conversation, one stitched with something deeper, urgency. Jasmine took a breath. Her mind flashed with faces. Maria, the single mother who'd cried in her office after being denied housing for the third time. Jamal, the teenager who'd watched his brother get handcuffed over a broken taillight. "We need to stop legislating from fear," she said. "Fear of losing power, fear of confronting our history, fear of being wrong. We need to stop demonizing empathy like it's weakness, and we need to start building a politics that feels like it belongs to everybody, not just the privileged few." Silence. Anderson Cooper sat back in his chair. His hands were folded now, elbows on the desk. Something in his face shifted. The practiced neutrality wavered. "Congresswoman," he said slowly, "I've been doing this for over 20 years. I've sat across from presidents, senators, foreign leaders, but that was one of the most clear-eyed things I've heard in a very long time." The studio was quiet, the kind of quiet that isn't empty but full, like a held breath. One of the producers, still off camera, wiped tears from her eyes. But the moment wasn't just about politics. Across the country, in a modest house in Oak Cliff, Texas, Jasmine's mother, Bernice, sat on the edge of her couch, a tissue crumpled in her hand. Her daughter had made it all the way to Congress, but to Bernice, she was still the little girl who used to argue her way out of bedtime with lawyer, like Flair. Now, the world was hearing her clarity, and they were listening. And miles away in Washington, Jasmine's legislative aide, Marcus, stared at the screen in awe. He'd watched her battle through the chaos of committee rooms, fight off misinformation online, and still find time to check in on his mother after her surgery. He'd believed in her from day one, but now the world saw what he saw. A woman unshaken, burning with purpose. Back in the studio, Anderson looked down for a moment as if searching for the right words. "When you spoke just now," he said, "you didn't just challenge your colleagues, you challenged all of us." Jasmine offered a soft smile. "That's the point, isn't it? Change doesn't start in Congress. It starts with people deciding to give a damn again." The interview wrapped. The credits rolled, but no one in the studio moved right away. That night, clips of the segment flooded social media. The phrase "stop legislating from fear" trended for hours. Young activists quoted her. Older voters, disillusioned by years of empty promises, said they felt something stir for the first time in a long while. Not because it was flashy, not because it was loud, but because it was real. Anderson Cooper would later write in his memoir that it was one of the most profound interviews of his career, not because it made headlines, but because it reminded him why journalism mattered. That night he didn't just witness insight, he witnessed courage, but Jasmine didn't do it for headlines. She didn't do it for applause. She went home to her small D.C. apartment, kicked off her heels, and read through the emails pouring in from people across the country, teachers, veterans, students, parents, all saying the same thing: "I felt seen." And that, to her, meant everything. Because for all the noise, all the battles, all the exhaustion, Jasmine Crockett believed in people. And she believed that when truth is spoken with clarity, it doesn't echo. It resonates, it plants seeds. And sometimes, if you listen close enough, it leaves the room completely silent.